Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. With host and founder Richard Case and co-host and retreat leader Kathy Ricconi. Join us every weekday at this time to discuss news, spend time in the Word, and receive answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, Kathy.
Good morning.
How are you doing this morning? We're continuing our series on overcoming fear, worry, and anxiety. Tuesday, we're in February now. How about that?
February 1st. I love it. Now, doing well over here. It's lots of interesting stuff going on, but God is just moving and speaking and doing his thing. I am honestly very hopeful and expectant for what all is going to transpire in 2022.
Yeah, there's going to be lots and lots of interesting things, and God is helping us understand, in spite of everything that's going on in the world of chaos, that he says, I still can deliver you to the covenant life. I'm going to bless you, make you a blessing. So it's one of the beautiful things of understanding what it means to walk with him, is that, we're going to have trouble. We're going to have things that don't work, things that are struggle. And they would elicit a response of worry or a response of fear, even anxiety. And he said, that's okay, I understand. Let me teach you, he says, how to transfer. Don't stay there very long.
Right. And
come and process with me and understand, and we've talked about this, I'm going to resolve this. You got a real issue, and he doesn't ask us to deny that or go to resignation about it or say.
And he doesn't need us to sugarcoat it and pretend it, is not a big deal, and I'm only truly having faith if I don't think it's a big deal.
Right.
That's not what he's asking us to do either. You know?
Right. And by the way, a lot of people, where that winds up is what I call Christian fatalism. And that is, well, whatever happens, happens. And I guess I should just accept it as God's will, because isn't he in control? And I got this problem, and if it doesn't turn out too well, I guess God is just saying, well, that's part of your suffering, or that's part of your understanding, and I'm teaching you a lesson. And we go to fatalism by saying, well, whatever happens, happens. And by the way, usually because we're in the world, what happens isn't that great.
Right.
And we just kind of live with it. And everybody...
And live in that place waiting for the next shoe to drop.
Yeah.
Or other shoe to drop. Or
and
whatever,
everybody, and I've actually, I've been pastors of churches, taken over churches that are troubled. And one of the things I've done is, when I step into a role like that, is I go visit the small groups. And I just sit there and listen. And they, what I usually experience is what I call the blind leading the blind. And that is that they talk and they share the trouble that they're in, that they experience. This isn't working. My relationship with my spouse isn't working. My kids, this isn't working. My business isn't working. I've got a financial trouble. I've got a opposition. I've got something happened. And it becomes, in a sense, a badge of honor to talk about the problem. And then, of course, they say, let's pray about that. And so the prayers go to, God, would you? And here's what I'd like you to do, and here's when I'd like you to do it.
Which is very different than what you taught us on those segments that you really talked about what a sacred assembly looks like.
Yes. And so then I get involved here and say that, do you, and I start working group by group, do you believe that God will resolve these issues? Well, not really. Whatever happens, happens. And at least we get to share our collective woe. And people, are sad about that, and they say, we'd like to join you, and we're lifting you up, and we hope that you don't, get too depressed. But I said, but do you understand that God can resolve this specifically? And we need to go a different direction by, let's learn to abide, let's get into the Word, let's hear what God has to say, let's call our sacred assembly together. Let's hear together what God would say about the promised land. I'm going to give you the promised land. God says, I'll perform something and deliver something. You need to walk with me into that. And by the way, it'll be quite exciting to receive it, live it, experience it. God gets excited to be with you, and you start to see things happen supernaturally. When you do, your whole life changes. It goes from the discouragement of whatever to I can hardly wait to see God do this. And by the way, and this is really cool, this is where the covenant comes in. I'm going to bless you to make you a blessing. As you experience it, and I know you've done that even for your group, and God's saying to you, even strengthen your group, it's, well, what are you going to say to them? Mm-hmm. God will do this. God is going to do this for you, because we've been blessed with seeing it happen. Now, by the way, and this is important, it doesn't place us out of the world, where we say, oh well, we're in such a state that we never have any trouble.
We're not immune to the troubles of the world by any stretch.
It's in the world you're going to have trouble. You are going to have difficulty. You're going to have opposition. You're going to have things that don't work. But I'll resolve it for you. And as we learn that, that's the covenant life, and I think that you and I can talk about this further, but that may be something we want to get into in detail. What is the covenant? But I'm blessed, and the blessing is God bringing resolution to the very issues that I have all the time. And as I experience that, I then can stand with somebody else and say, well, God will resolve it. And I can guarantee you he'll resolve it. Now, I don't know how. I don't know when. I don't know all the detail about it. All I know is that he will, and I'm going to walk with you into that to experience it. And the blessing that shifts, and this is what happens when I was with these small groups, is that instead of staying in your place of resignation, why don't you allow me to help you understand a new way of walking with God, that he'll start resolving it. And as they did, and as they do, guess what? They then stood with other people because they started giving it away. Well, hey, it did happen for me. I did learn that it was true. Let me give it away. And that's where the blessing comes in. And that's what we're trying to encourage everybody with is don't accept mediocrity. Don't accept failure. Don't accept, I guess this isn't going to work. Rather, let's go together, and that's why we encourage you that again. And let me toss it up here that if you have a question, send it on the YouTube or questions@afjministry.com. Questions@afjministry.com, and you might have something very specific. Because hey, I got this problem. I got this issue. I got this thing that's not working. I've listened to what you had to say, but exactly how is this going to work for me? What steps do I need to go through? And we're happy to do that. We're happy to
absolutely.
assist you.
The other thing I would add to that, I don't know if you have something you can put up on this as well, but just thinking about the sacred assembly, and if you are not a part of a group right now who is willing or knows how to do that together, even going back and let's go online. We've got so many online courses and they're set up for small groups, but taking your small group and doing the online course that we have on abiding and beginning there and teaching, as a group, coming together and learning to abide and learning to process together. And then you can go into the other courses as well when they want to. But that's a starting point, is being able to have people around you, because not everyone has people around them to do a sacred assembly and who will truly not just listen to their woes, but take them to the Father's feet and see what he has to say.
Yeah. So I've thrown the website up of again, afjministry.com. You can go to the website, look at retreats. You can even say, can I join a retreat? How do I get a group of people around me? I've got people maybe in my church. Could we set something up to even do a retreat, do an online course? There's a place called Online Courses that you can participate with that. But we would encourage you to start to get down the road with receiving the content, and the best way to do it is with people around you. So you and your spouse, you and your friends, you and your small group, invite people together that you learn together to assist each other. That's part of the body. And it says this, in Ephesians 4, 24 and 25. But it says, "Put on the new man, put on Christ. Speak the truth to each other, because you're members of each other."
Right.
And we need that.
Absolutely.
And remember, the truth is, well, here's what I'm hearing. What are you hearing? What's true? Share with me what's really going on. And so when I come across somebody who's struggling, I'll just say to them, okay, why don't you write out all the truth that you know at the moment? What exactly is going on, and why are you worried about this? What are you fearful about? Don't sugarcoat that. Let's get to the truth and put the truth out there. And then based upon that truth, I'm going to start asking you questions. We're going to go see together, what would God say about this? What instruction does he have? What is his promise to carry this into the promised land? And I'm going to walk with you so that it starts to get clear step by step by step. And by the way, what you'll see is the resolution to this very issue that you have, which is very, very specific. And so that's why he says, take it out of the general.
Right.
Yeah, I got trouble. God solved my trouble. No, he says it's very specific. And it could be numerous. Like Linda, I think we shared, Linda and I, we had that group of 18. We had
a list of 18, right?
They were very specific, and they weren't answered the same way. And we didn't say, God, we got 18, take care of them. He said that's part of the problem, quite frankly, Rich and Linda, because we were, talking about, seems like things stalled out. And as we prayed about that and we listed them all down and we talked together, okay, what do you have to say about that? He said, you kind of got lazy.
Right. And we can do that sometimes because it does take effort and it does take initiative.
Yeah. And he said, you kind of went back to the generic and you were just kind of throwing up these lofty, God take care of these issues, prayers, but we weren't talking about any of them.
Right.
And you got lazy with it. So we got to get specific. So that's what we did. We took then many, many days and weeks and months.
Yeah.
And we're still in some of them. We have new ones. But we stopped being lazy.
Right.
Because that was his instruction.
Yeah, even as you do that, and we've said this before, but I think it's so important to pay attention to, why not be lazy in that? Because yes, God can just do that and take care of it. But everything we're facing truly is an invitation to intimacy with him.
Yes.
And he desires above all else, if you look at, is it Mark 3:13-15 maybe, where he talks about that he called the disciples to be with him and then he sent them. It all starts in intimacy. His heart's desire is to be with us. And that intimacy always comes before any assignment or anything that he is telling us to do. And so even when we're facing difficulties, every one of those specific problems is a specific point of an invitation to intimacy with him, that he will meet us in that place and we will come on the other side of it, getting to know him better.
Right. And
it's just, there's a sweetness. I have a friend who I was with, actually Emily, you know her, my daughter-in-law. They were here over New Year's, and it was funny. I looked down at her hand, and on her left hand is written in ink, Jesus. And I'm like, what? This is cool. I like this. And she's like, yeah, that's my reminder. And, when you talk about Emmanuel with us, and there's so many verses where it says, God has you by his right hand and he's taking you and he's walking you. She's like, sometimes we need a physical, visible reminder of what the spiritual reality is.
Right.
And so by her writing that on her hand, she's reminding herself that he is right there in this intimate relationship with her in every step. And if I was standing next to her, we'd be conversing about it. And so in seeing that on her hand, it's a reminder to her, he's standing right there with her. I should be conversing with him 24/7 about what's going on. It's a beautiful picture, I think.
Yeah. And this is what your verse you're talking about is Mark chapter 3. The first 3 chapters are talking, they give specifics of, I'm calling Matthew, I'm calling you, I'm calling this person. You know, come and basically he says, come and follow me, I'll make you fishers of men.
Right.
And here, so he's experienced them. There's been quite a few people who have said, wow, this is fantastic. Look at what because he's cleansing lepers, he's doing supernatural stuff, healing people. Hey, I'd like to be part of that. So in Mark 3:13, he says he went up on the mountain and called to him those he himself wanted. So he's talking to the Father. And these people came to him, and then he appointed 12 that they, and this is what you're saying, that they might be with him.
Yes.
And that he might send them out to preach, to have power to heal sicknesses, to cast out demons. And so he basically says the 2 steps is, I'm going to call you to myself.
Yes.
And we're just going to be together.
Yeah.
And that's what we talk about.
Everything is born from that intimacy.
From that intimacy. And see, that's what we talk about abiding, which he describes in John 15. Christ said, I'm the vine, the Father's the vine dresser, you're the branches. Choose to abide with me, stay with me, remain with me, be in intimacy with me. And through that relationship, he said, that's the first piece of it.
Right.
There will then be assignments that will be coming out of that. And I'm going to use you to facilitate, participate in, and he says, tell people about the kingdom. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I'm going to have you demonstrate the supernatural power of healing, overcoming the demonic, resolving issues. You're going to be part of that. It's all born out of that intimacy. And God says, my joy, and he says this in Ephesians,
be with you.
is you are my inheritance. That my joy, which is why I created you in the first place, is I get to be with you. And by the way, not only do you get to be with you, but I put myself in you. And now we have this intimacy of you can hear my voice, you can listen to me, you can process. And by the way, I want you to do that with your spouse. I want you to do that with your inner circle. I want to do that with your sacred assembly, your small group. Together, we are going to have intimacy, you with me, they with me, you with they, and we get to experience the beautiful life of God. It's not just a theological thing, because that's what we kind of limit it and say, well, yeah, okay, I'm going to receive Christ, I get to be with him, I get to have eternity with him. Isn't that nice? He says the life is to be intended to be lived out today. And it's not just the transaction, it's the life that I'm going to give you. And that life is going to play itself out in specifics about your very issues in the world that you're having trouble in. And you'll see the supernatural. And by the way, when you do, what will you recognize? How fun is this?
Right.
And then, by the way, the people around you, you'll say,
we'll also see it.
Hey, I get to see that. Could I do that? Yeah, sure. And that's why I can say to everybody, yeah, I know you got trouble. I understand it. Even, by the way, where you've caused it.
Right.
And you made it worse because you didn't listen to God. You didn't process with God. You've actually done some things that are against God. But God says, well, that doesn't matter. How about now? Why don't you just repent, come on back with me, and let me restore all this now. Let me just take care of it.
Right.
And he said, that doesn't bother me that you caused it. What he says, what I want is for you to walk with me now. how about now? That's the gospel, as he gives it to us. So it's a beautiful thing. So we would urge you to don't accept just resignation. Is
Right.
go
I
to where he's
agree.
going to go. And let's go to. We've been talking about Joshua. That he's been a follower of God. He learned again the issue of what he got to say to me, and I'm going to listen and process with you. And we talked about Jericho and AI and how that worked. Let's go to this. There's a beautiful statement that Joshua makes in Joshua 21:43. So if you would read that for us. It's a simple little statement, but it's very profound.
Thus the Lord gave to Israel all the land that he swore to give to their fathers, and they took possession of it, and they settled there.
Yeah. Okay, so think about these amazing statements. What did God do?
He delivered the promise. He did exactly what he said he was going to do.
Yeah. So now this is many, many, many years later. So between Joshua 6 and 21, it's many, many years.
Okay.
And what they've been doing is occupying each step, each city, each place, which, by the way,
so this is the progression of the movement. Those chapters are the progression of the movement from when they were leaving the wilderness and then when God was leading them city by city to the promised land.
Yeah. And this is there's a cool statement that is made, is that, and he gives this in Deuteronomy. He says, I can't give you the entire place all at once.
Mm-hmm.
He says a couple things. One, you can't occupy it all at once. It's too big for you, and you won't be able to occupy it. And he said, if I delivered it to you, and then said, okay, now go occupy it, by the time you get to certain cities, it would have, and this is interesting, it would have already decayed. Everything that was there to be received would have been destroyed, and again, just by entropy.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been overrun with weeds and with
That's fascinating.
with wild animals, and you wouldn't be. I'd have to start over to deliver it again. So he said, I can't give it to you all at once, because you need step by step to. And it says here, what did they do?
So this is, I know, an ignorant question, but how big was the promised land? How much territory are we talking about here that they were going in to possess?
Well, we're talking about, it's called the land of Canaan.
Okay.
And it would be equivalent to Israel today.
Okay.
So from north to south, it's probably 300-400 miles.
So as they entered then, and again, I know this sounds so ignorant, but maybe somebody else has the same question, so it's okay. So as they entered, then they go through one city to the next, and there's all of this that they are gradually taking over and possessing. Are pockets of people staying in each city that they go, and then another portion is moving on to the next?
That's what's happening. Yes, so that when you think of, remember Israel, out of the sons of Jacob, how many were there?
12, right? Yeah.
And then each one of them,
the 12 tribes
became the 12 tribes of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
So that David ultimately,
mm-hmm.
Where does David live and grow up? Bethlehem.
Right.
He's called the Benjaminite.
Okay.
A tribe.
So of the tribe of Benjamin.
Okay, why? Well, because that's where that group settled.
And that's where they settled along the route of
in the Promised Land.
Okay.
So it was literally the whole group.
I think in my mind, I have pictured for years they crossed in and they stepped and they're just in the promised land.
Right.
I haven't really thought about the progression of how they would settle along the way.
Yeah. So they would take a city. So like, for example, Jericho. We talked about Jericho.
Right.
Well, there was a group that stayed there.
Right.
And now they're occupying, living.
Right. Well, and that makes so much more sense now, as you say, if he had delivered it all at once, then those cities, that would be further down the road, simply geographically from walking distance and getting there, would go into entropy and would not be cared for until they were able to come and receive it.
Right.
And so that's really I don't know, that's a beautiful thing I have never thought about or even considered. So, yeah.
So he says, here we are, many, many, many years later. You have been faithful to follow me. God says, I've delivered to you the land of Canaan, which is now Israel.
Right.
And remember, and this is important. If you remember the very first instruction, and this is out of Joshua chapter 1, what did he say? Every place that you set your foot is I'm going to give it to you. And it's like, okay. Now, by the way, and this is important. Did he tell him up front, well, this is every place you're going to go?
No. It was very specific.
He said,
step by step.
I'm going to tell you step by step where I send you, where you set your foot, the city I send you to. We're going to overcome it. We're going to win it. You're going to leave a group behind to occupy it. And then we'll go to the next one, and then we'll go to and all I'm asking you is to remember, I've said something. Right. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna deliver to you the promised land, and it's gonna be the land of Canaan. And every place you set your foot, you're gonna have victory. Now, remember that. I'll tell you how to do it, step by step by step. And then he comes here to Joshua 21. And says, I did it.
Right.
And by the way, not only did I do it, but what did you do? He said.
You took possession of it and you settled there.
And you settled.
Yeah.
You took possession, and now you're here, and we've gained victory.
Right.
And you have peace because there's not another battle to take. Don't worry.
Right.
We've got peace now. And so now it's going to shift to experiencing the fullness of the covenant while you're now here. So I got you to the right place. I've given you victory. You possessed it. You've received it. But see, that's not the end of life, is it?
Right.
It's not like, okay, great, you made it. And so see, that a lot of people would say, okay, great. I got the promised land. Thank you. I'll take I'll take it from here.
And in fact, when we're sitting in some of our what feels like the most blessed situations, that is when the temptation is so much so to go to self and forget that it's God who led you there and is delivering that and is blessing you in order truly to be a blessing.
Yeah.
And we tend to go back to, I think there's all kinds of warnings in the Bible about when you possess this, don't forget that it was God that delivered it to you. Don't forget him. It's so easy for us to forget.
Yeah, Deuteronomy,
and go back to our old ways.
Deuteronomy chapter 8 goes into a pretty thorough discussion of that. Hey, by the way, don't you think you did this on your own?
Right.
Don't forget what I've done, and it's not because of how great you are. Right. It's because of how great I am, and all you did is follow me, and keep remembering that so that you keep living it out now into now what? Now how do we live? What's next? How do we flourish?
Right.
Yeah. And I'll give you specifics. Don't let pride and think now that we did this, look at what we did. And he said, exactly. Remember, it was me. So he says, I've done it. Here we are. You possessed it, so you were faithful in following me step by step by step, city by city by city, and you possessed those as I've asked you to, and now you've settled. You've got to a point where things are resolved, things are settled, but there's more to it. Okay, now go to Joshua 24, 11 to 15. Joshua 24, 11 to 15.
And you went over the Jordan and came to Jericho, and the leaders of Jericho fought against you, and also the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And I gave them into your hand. And I sent the hornet before you, which drove them out before you, the two kings of the Amorites. It was not by your sword or by your bow. I gave you a land on which you had not labored, and cities that you had not built, and you dwell in them. You eat the fruit of vineyards and olive orchards that you did not plant. Now, therefore, fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in faithfulness. Put away the gods that your fathers served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. If it is evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose this. If it is evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your father served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord.
Yeah. So he makes this amazing statement, goes through a litany. Mm-hmm. Hey, remember, all these different factions. Mm-hmm. That were all against you. Mm-hmm. What did God say that he did?
God delivered them. He gave them into their hand. It wasn't anything that they did.
Yeah. So I delivered it supernaturally.
Yeah. In fact, it says, he actually drove them out before you, Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. And so it's not by your don't say it's by you and by your sword and by your skill. My resolution of the issue at hand is going to be me fulfilling it supernaturally, not in the natural, but things that I can do that is my power, which is superior to any problem you got. So yeah, you had a problem, which is, by the way, why your parents weren't willing to go. They said it's too difficult. There's no way we can do this. We're not willing to go. And God said, well, okay. It makes me sad. I'm grieved, angry that I can't deliver that to you, but okay. Well, 40 years later, they're all dead. Right. And now they've died outside of God's will, wandered around because they went to resignation. And remember, God's will, this is important, it's not automatic.
Right.
It's by invitation. Do you have a heart to follow? I'll perform it, but you have to have a heart to follow. And that's really what I have to teach people brand new, is that no, God's will isn't automatic. These things that have happened to you weren't because God said that's my will. It's that you weren't willing to learn what it meant to receive his will and let him deliver his will. Would you be willing to learn it? Yes, okay, let's go. And he says, I did the work, and I will do the work. And now you're here. You've been faithful to possess it. You've been faithful to settle here. But now he says something cool. Okay, hallelujah. Your issue was resolved.
Right.
However, what is now the challenge that he's offering them? And says, okay, yes, we are happy, thrilled. God's resolved this. He's delivered it to us. Hallelujah. By the way, what's important next? What did he say? Joshua.
Basically, who are you going to serve?
Yeah. Okay.
Are you now staying with God, or are you returning to idols and gods of the past?
Right. So that, it's always what's next. Mm-hmm. You are going to experience, if you have a heart to go, God says, I will perform this. I'll do this. I'll deliver this. You possess it. And it'll happen. And you'll see it happen. At that moment, this is really important. It's like, well, are you going to stop the process because you said, well, I got it resolved. So now I'll just take over, or I'll just stay here and expect everything to go fine. And God says, no. Interesting enough, you have a critical choice to make, and it's actually now even more pronounced now than it was before. Because now that you've experienced resolution, your tendency is you're going to let down.
Right.
You're going to, in a sense, say, okay, great. Now that we're here, doesn't that mean that God's going to just keep taking care of us and everything's going to be great? And he says, well, actually, I have a statement to make. Who are you going to serve?
Right.
When?
Mm-hmm.
When does he say when? Well, the when is now.
Right. Right.
Are you going to serve me now? Because you can move away. You've experienced resolution, but now you can move away because you kind of let down and say, oh,
Right.
oh, great. Okay, good. That was solved. That was resolved. Hallelujah. I'll take over from here.
And we do that a lot of times out of weariness, even out of excitement.
Yeah.
For what, we just get our eyes off the ball, know?
Yeah. And he says, no, you're going to have more trouble. So Joshua says, one thing I'd like to say to everybody, interesting enough, he says is what's next is really critical. Mm-hmm. And it's all dependent on your choice. Are you going to keep following God like you have been or not? And he says, now, I'm letting you know. You have a choice to make, and it's up to you. He says, as far as me and my house, what did he say?
We will serve the Lord.
Well, we're serving God.
Yeah.
I've learned, and remember, it goes all the way back to his experience at AI, where he didn't follow God.
Right.
He said, well, I've learned this. Mm-hmm. And I understand it's not great. We got what we needed, and we can kind of relax and let down. He actually says, I'm going to up the game a little bit and say to everybody, you're going to have to make a choice. When? Now. And I'm telling you, me and my house, we're following.
We will serve the
We're
Lord.
going to follow God and expect God to deliver the next thing and the next issue and the next trouble and the next process that I got to process, because you're going to have, because of the world we live in, are you going to be free of problems?
Never.
No. You're going to have new challenges. You're going to have new issues, so that now that you're experiencing the fulfillment of this, the possession of the promised land, the promise, it doesn't end the process. See, the life continues.
Right. And I love even just in the way he phrases that, choose you this day who you will serve. It's that daily surrender.
Yes.
Just because I surrendered it yesterday does not mean my heart's there today.
Right. So when you think of surrender now, what does that imply for you? What does that bring to mind you in terms of God saying, yeah, hey, honey, are you going to follow me today? Are you going to surrender to me today? What does that mean?
For me, it's letting go of my agenda and asking him what his is.
Yeah.
And being willing. And for me, again, one of the things God has taught me is my answer to him is yes before I know what his question is.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm really surrendered. It's not I'm waiting to hear what it is and then I decide. It's when I go in saying, whatever it is you have to say, my answer is yes.
Yes.
So speak and send me.
Yeah. And that's why, remember, he says that this occurs, thy kingdom come. It occurs in the kingdom where I'm the king and you've surrendered your will to me, as you say, just fundamentally.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to go with you. When? Now.
Right.
About what? About the issues of my life now. What's next? Say, hey, thank you. Hallelujah.
Absolutely.
I am rejoicing that you solved that issue. Guess what? I'm going to surrender to the next one. And by the way, and this is what's so cool, the more that you do that, the more willing and, let's say, confident we get. Is I keep getting answers to issues all the time.
Right.
So why would I not?
So why would you not? Exactly.
Why would I not? And then thy will be done. So I'm going to surrender my will to yours, and you lead me and guide me into your will. And that's why I need people around me to help confirm it. As for me and my house, and that's why Joshua said, hey, by the way, this isn't me alone. It's my wife. It's my kids. It's my people around me. we are going to keep following God together.
Right.
And we're just going to make that decision now and always. And we're not going to let it drift away, but rather we're going to experience the fullness of God now into the next. And that's, we talked about this yesterday with Linda and I, where God said, yeah, you got kind of lazy with this. You and your house really weren't serving me. You kind of just drifted into, well, God, I hope you take care of everything.
Right.
No, it's very specific. And when is it? Now. About what? The issues of your life now. Now that you've experienced this, wouldn't you want to keep staying with me and have me do it more and more and more? And the answer is, yeah. As far as me and my house, yes, we're going to serve the Lord now. And he said, you can choose not to. That's what Joshua's implying here, is that you can choose not to and go back to having things not work out too well. Because he'll let you. He's not going to force you. It's always by invitation. Do you have a heart to serve me now? When? About the issues of your life today. Let's go. And let me keep doing it. I'll keep doing it.
Right.
You will receive it. And by the way, you'll give it away because you'll tell other people. What a beautiful way to live.
Absolutely.
So it's really remarkable. And we'll pick up more of this in terms of understanding the truth of all this as we say, yes, I'm going to serve you. And again, serving you is going back to what Joshua learned, which was, what do you have to say to me? Mm-hmm. What's the truth about this? Guide me into it, ask, seek, knock. Let me have people around me that are going to assist me, but we are going to get a resolution, and I can hardly wait to see what you're going to do to give us that
hope and that expectation.
That expectation of giving the resolution. So we'll pick it up again tomorrow of more in depth of this as we work toward finishing this series. But we just encourage everybody to don't go to fatalism, don't go to resignation, and particularly after you've experienced victory. Mm-hmm. That's an important moment where God says, now that you've experienced it, I need you to make a deeper choice. Are you going to keep following me? Are you and your house going to serve me? And Joshua, of course, said, well, that's what we're going to do. So we encourage you to do that.
Love it.
So we will pick it up again tomorrow.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, Rich. This was a fun conversation.
Yeah.
I enjoyed learning all of this and just reiterating it. So have a great day, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and stay close to him. Emmanuel, God with us. Enjoy the presence and the power of God today.
Yep. Amen. All right. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by All for Jesus Living Waters Ministry. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.